Hello and welcome to Healthy Savvy Life and our weekly wrap episode. It's Corey Sievers here. Great to have you on board. If you happen to be jumping on live, then do give me a wave so that I can see that you are with us. And if you have any questions, do please feel free to ask. So here on our weekly wrap episode, we look to sort of just go through what we've covered through the week, maybe some other questions that have come up, and get the chance to chat a bit more casually about some of these really important topics at this, this particularly troublesome time right now. It's important for us to be sharing and talking about ideas that we can all do to reduce stress, help us to feel better, improve our immunity, and really just get on with looking after ourselves in the best possible way. So this week we talked about GERD and acid reflux and things like that, and so we'll be just answering some questions there, maybe doing a bit of a review. We talked about the amazing fatty acid CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, and when you follow the Eat Savvy approach, you're certainly increasing the levels of CLA in your body, naturally occurring CLA. You can supplement with that, but there are some definite advantages from a body recomposition point of view, but there are some disadvantages if you're not in control of your blood sugar and insulin response and those sorts of things. We even discussed how to maybe offset that. So we'll maybe do a bit of a review of that, answer any questions there. And we thought we've had some questions come in recently about stress and overwhelm and how to deal with not coping with those sorts of things. So although we've not done a specific, we've done lots of things on stress and all of that sort of thing, we've not done a specific session on stress-busting adaptogenic herbs. And so we thought we'd do a little bit of a glimpse at some of the adaptogenic herbs that are real stress busters. Because the great thing about adaptogenic herbs is that they adapt. Funny that. And so they actually work with your whole endocrine and hormonal system to give you what you need. And that's the great thing. So if you feel like you need a bit of a boost, but you're also stressed, then that's great. Adaptogenic herbs can be really helpful. If you feel like some of the specific herbs calm you down too much and make you feel foggy, then maybe you just need to have some of the things that are taking the load off the systems of the body, and you feel better, and then you feel less stressed. So it's interesting, adaptogenic herbs work in a different way to, people sort of think, well, I need something for my stress to calm me down, but I also need something for my energy levels to wake me up. And so you've seen things, if you've ever seen things such as you can't use medication to do that. If you've ever seen, for example, the movie or read The Wolf of Wall Street with Jordan Belfort, or looked at any movies or understood about the challenges with drugs, with recreational drugs or any other drugs for that matter, they have very specific effects. And then sometimes, so in the movie Wolf of Wall Street, for example, and the books, I read the books, he'd be taking one medication and be so slow, one drug, and be so slow that he'd have to take, for example, another drug to pick him up to be able to function again. So with medications, it's a constant balancing act that doctors and pharmacists have to work with. And same thing with recreational drugs. But the interesting thing with certain adaptogenic herbs, you're not really doing that. They're actually naturally assisting your body to function. They're not taking over from your body. So we thought we'd talk about some of the benefits of those in this particular episode. All right, so let's get underway. I just want to review some of the questions that we have. And as I said, we haven't done an actual episode on these stress-busting nutrients. We've done stress-busting nutrients, but not these adaptogenic herbs. So we'll look to maybe do a special session on that. So yes, this is what we're talking about. We talked this week about preventing heartburn, treating GERD, the CLA, and how it can not only help you burn fat, but also boost your immune system. And we'll talk about some stress relief herbals that can keep you centered. So, of course, as we're getting underway, please be aware that everything I'm sharing is for educational purposes only, so do pay attention to this important notice. Now, another thing too, if you're new to what we do here in the Healthy Savvy Life show and you want to know where to find past episodes, they're all available, depending on where you're coming in from, and you might be hearing this as a podcast, watching it on YouTube, or catching it on the live Facebook broadcast. Whatever it is, then we have playlists there for you to go back and look at past episodes. But one easy way to stay up to date with what we're doing around that is to actually visit our event page on Facebook. We decided that that was the easiest way to keep you up to date, and so we usually do try to link that up on every episode here, but you can always swing by our Facebook page, so facebook.com/SavvyTeam, SAVVYTEAM, and just swing by the events section and check there. But under the video section, we have a whole playlist for the Healthy Savvy Life episode. So go definitely check that out. Okay, so first of all, I noticed that there were some questions that we had from the point of view of our what we talked about this week: how to stop acid reflux and prevent heartburn and treat GERD naturally. So GERD or GORD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, whether it's GERD or GORD depends on where you are in the world and how you spell esophagus. So that's the only difference. And so here in this region of the world, we call it esophagus with an O to begin with, and same thing in the UK, etc. But most of the world on the internet calls it GERD, so we'll go with that. It's interesting there. I don't know how to spell aging sometimes because we have many of our followers that are from overseas markets and in the US and that sort of thing, and so aging isn't spelled with an E there. Esophagus is not spelt with an O. Anyway, so these acronyms and spelling sometimes get a little bit confusing. So looking at that, there was a couple of questions that came in regarding that, and I thought that would be worthwhile starting with here. So are there foods or beverages that I should avoid if I'm suffering with acid reflux? Well, definitely. Typically, typically they suggest that there are things such as, like any of the things such as coffee and tea, because they're acidifying, they believe that's no good. All of the citrus fruits are problematic. And these what we're dealing with here is whether we're talking about it causing or making it worse. So if you're suffering from acid reflux, yes, these sorts of foods can make that worse. They can irritate things, but it's not necessarily the underlying cause. So coffee and tea, carbonated drinks can be a problem. Even things like peppermint tea can be a problem. But all the things such as grapefruit and oranges, sometimes lemons and limes too, but sometimes they can be beneficial. Tomatoes, alcohol, fried foods, spicy foods, things like that. One big problem for many people, they suffer acid reflux at night time. So avoiding late night snacks is wise. Avoiding eating 3 hours before bed, anything, and sort of being able to stay upright is really helpful. And we talked about all those tips, like you can even raise your bed up. But avoiding those sorts of foods and avoiding late night eating is a really good thing. But you know what? Most of the time they even avoid chocolate too. So most of the time, all of the evidence is sort of saying avoid these foods because they irritate acid reflux. But have we ever considered what's going on that may be upsetting the whole equilibrium of our digestive system? So what we've found is that when people start to follow the Eat Savvy approach and get rid of the typical inflammatory foods, the predominant ones being sugar, grains, and inflammatory seed oils. So, and hence fried food comes up a bit, and most people fry in vegetable oils and things like that. So, and that's inflammatory. So some of the evidence is showing that it may be the pain may be coming from an actual inflammatory trigger in the esophagus. And so it's not just from the actual acid reflux, it's actually inflammation. So again, we've got the root cause of inflammation. What's the root cause of inflammation throughout the whole body? And a lot of that is our diet. So if we can get rid of those primary triggers, sugar, grains of all kinds, and then inflammatory seed oils. And this is one of the biggest challenges that I see, and is that people, for example, think that gluten-free is healthy. And so what they do is they're on a lot of gluten-free things. And yeah, if you're celiac, you definitely want to eliminate gluten. If you're an underdiagnosed celiac, then get yourself tested and get off gluten. But you don't just jump onto gluten-free foods, because the gluten-free foods can then be rich in sugar, other inflammatory grains, and vegetable oils and margarines and vegetable fat, for example, hydrogenated vegetable fat. So a lot of people jump off things that are, from out of the frying pan, we could say, into the fire, because they're eating more packaged foods and more of these problematic and inflammatory foods. So if you've been off the topic, if you've been diagnosed with celiac, or if you have any gluten intolerance and everything, I would encourage you to avoid grains altogether. You will heal faster, you will feel better. It may be a difficult journey because we become often addicted to grains, but they're causing a lot of problems in many people. And look, it's not the grains' fault. It is our modern production of that. It's the overuse of glyphosates on grain crops and these seed oil crops. When you eliminate grains from your diet and you eliminate inflammatory seed oils, like vegetable oils and soybean oils and canola oils and all that sort of thing, you are eliminating most of the exposure to glyphosates, the pesticide glyphosate. And if you avoid legumes, that gets rid of almost the rest of them. And the evidence is starting to point to the fact that glyphosate damages our microbiome and impacts our whole digestive system and our ability to really function properly. So we don't even eating organic is great, but you don't even need to do that. You eliminate we followed the 80-20 rule, the savvy 80-20 rule in reality. The Pareto principle said that if you just focus on the 20% of that are the worst offenders, we call that the Pareto dietary principle, 20% that are the worst offenders, then you can actually heal. And many people like saying, oh, I couldn't go on a diet. There's no way I could give up my chocolate and my red wine. Well, if you've seen my weight loss story, when I finally decided that's it, I'm going to get myself back in order, I still had chocolate and red wine, and I verified with DEXA scans lost almost 10% in body fat. So I went from 27% body fat down to 17%. And I still had red wine and chocolate, but I did eliminate all grains and all inflammatory seed oils and most sugar, apart from what was in the chocolate. Anyway. So that's off the topic, but I'm just sort of suggesting here that a lot of the times we focus on what we're going to miss out on rather than what we're going to gain. And so don't do that. Really look at the benefits for you. So there's some of the foods that are the most problematic. So although the documented evidence would say that things like alcohol, fried foods, grapefruits, and citrus fruits, chocolate, carbonated drink, coffee and tea are the worst offenders for acid reflux, I would assert that what we've got to do is just simply start to move away from inflammatory foods in general, follow the Eat Savvy approach, and you'll probably find that settles down and you won't need to avoid some of these foods over the long term, because they do have some benefits. Okay, so citrus fruits have benefits. I'd probably avoid tomatoes continuing because they can have some inflammation-causing effects being a nightshade vegetable. So there's some of the things that I would suggest. A good question. Hope that's helped. I went around about and talked about a few things there. So definitely. Look, you're going to have to experiment with that too. And if you like, let's talk about dairy, for example. Sometimes drinking a glass of milk can calm down that indigestion, that feeling, that acid reflux, and soothe that. And that is much better. Although milk isn't the ideal ingredient to put into your system, it's better than maybe an antacid or whatever to calm things down. And so what some people find is that if that does help you, go for something that's less inflammatory. So, for example, the A2 milk. Okay, now that's a specific brand that's available. I'm not sure whether it's available in all parts of the world, but it's the casein A1 protein that is the inflammatory protein in most milks. So most milks have both A1 and A2 proteins. And so the A2 has just specifically had the A1 eliminated. And so the more sensitive you are to dairy and inflammation and everything, the more important that is to eliminate. So there's some of the foods that you might want to avoid or use. Aloe vera, like if you suffer from acid reflux, then talk to us, reach out to your Savvy Team Wellness Guide, or find a safe, an aloe vera that doesn't have other additives in it, because that can really, really help. But even just drinking more water when you're feeling that reflux can help. That's certainly what Dr. Batman Galige found. But really, the calming effect of aloe vera is incredible. All right, drink more water. So another one here, are there any lifestyle changes that might help my heartburn symptoms? Well, I did mention some of those as I was going along there. Lifestyle changes would be things such as, trying not to eat 3 hours before you go to bed. That also has beneficial effects on what they call your glymphatic system, which is your brain's ability to cleanse itself. So you're more likely to wake up feeling sort of refreshed and clear-headed if you give yourself time before bed, between eating and going to bed. So that's an advantage there. Again, not a lifestyle thing might be not eating in such a hurry. Mindfully eating and chewing your food, so actually slowing down and seeing it more as something that you really do enjoy. So, and that's a really good help to eat less often. Often they do say the typical advice is to eat more frequent meals and smaller meals, because it can put pressure on the sphincter if you've got a really full stomach. I guess I've seen the opposite of that, in that trains your digestive system to be sort of like always in work mode, so you've always got something in your stomach, and that's sort of not ideal long term. So if you can sort of mindfully eat a meal and then not just snack until the next meal, and so when you have that meal, avoid drinking water with the meal, maybe have a little bit of apple cider vinegar with the first parts of it. So sometimes they'll say, have it before a meal. Well, if you suffer from challenges with and there's irritation in your esophagus and your stomach and everything, taking apple cider vinegar beforehand on an empty stomach may be upsetting, may cause discomfort. But having it in those initial stages, chewing your food well and having a little bit of apple cider vinegar with it, or having a leafy salad, chewing well and making sure that you have some vinegar with that, and that stimulates digestions. Include some bitter foods that stimulate the actual digestive juices, can really, really help. But again, taking an enzyme formula, and we're lucky that we have an enzyme formula that also has aloe vera and ginger and fennel, so it has all of the calming herbs in there as well. So that's why we find it really easy to help people with acid reflux. But more exercise, less of the inflammatory foods. They're all, from a lifestyle point of view, it's really dietary changes. It's long-term dietary approach. So this is an interesting topic that could medications I take be actually causing my GERD symptoms? Well, that is absolutely true, or at least making them worse. So, and this is an interesting one where we go on a medication for some reason, and then we have to take another medication like an antacid or a proton pump inhibitor to stop the symptoms, and then that gives more symptoms and everything. And that's the whole challenge when we're dealing with medications. There are real impacts. So if you are on medications, any medication, and you suspect that, then I would talk with your doctor or pharmacist and say, hey, you can just go to the pharmacist and say, hey, are any of these likely causing me symptoms? I guess one of the biggest challenges with going to the pharmacist, we've recommended just go to your pharmacist, talk to your pharmacist. Nowadays, the pharmacist's up the back, and you're basically often talking to, somebody who's just serving you at the counter, basically taking the orders. And so whether you have the ability to actually speak with your pharmacist depends on the type of pharmacy that you're obtaining medications from. So, but in answer to the question, so looking at some of the evidence, there are some things, aspirin, anti-inflammatories, some pain relief medications, the osteoporosis medications can cause the problem. But I'll just look at medically what some of what I was writing down or jotting down before, based on that. Because there are some specifics that are the most problematic. So there's a number of them that can be problematic, but yeah, antibiotics can be a real problem, and they can be a real problem right throughout your digestive system. So looking at that, there's several different types of antibiotics that can cause problems. Then we move into the painkillers. Aspirin and ibuprofen are both problematic for actually being linked to hurting your esophagus and causing heartburn, directly triggering a heartburn, or at least just inflammation in the esophagus that can feel like heartburn. I think medically they call that esophagitis. Esophagitis? But, inflammation of the esophagus. And so, what else? Yeah, so the osteoporosis medications, such as Fosamax, I think is one of them, they can be directly cause problems. Then other supplements that can be, potassium and iron supplements that you might be on, and these are more of they're not natural. They're not in a natural form. And so they can also cause problems there. And so like iron supplementation, before iron supplementation, we suggest balancing your stomach acid chemistry out, getting onto trace mineral supplementation, improving the greens that you have in your diet, or at least taking maybe a green superfood, taking a general chelated mineral supplement, and in making sure that you're having some of the cofactors that help with the absorption of iron, like antioxidants and all those sorts of things. And we often see that people's iron levels actually come up without taking iron. So you don't necessarily need to take the specific element if you improve your holistic health. And the challenge is that taking a specific, especially with a metallic mineral, it can build up in the body. So, you go from trying to balance one issue to balancing the other. So always, wherever possible, focus on food-based things and holistic supplementation. So rather than specifics for this and specifics for that, because otherwise you're fighting one thing after another rather than being on a regimen that supports your overall health. So that's what we've found works best, and for tens of thousands of community members. So specifically, some sedatives, some can trigger gastroesophageal problems, or at least inflammation. Maybe not specifically actually heartburn, but it can lead to that. A whole bunch of narcotics can as well. Many of the heart blood pressure medications can cause symptoms. So when you start to think about it, there's a broad array of medications that can directly trigger the heartburn. So definitely chatting with your doctor or pharmacist and saying, hey, is this causing that? Is there something else that we could do, or can we lessen the dose, or do I really need that, or all that sort of thing? If I'm improving my health over here, can you monitor that, and maybe in the future I won't need to be on that? Because medication can be life-saving in the short term, but really it's not ideal for us to be on any medications long term. And all good doctors actually agree with that. All really forward-thinking, health-focused doctors agree with that. All right. So, Paul, good question, Paul. Is it better to have a larger meal for lunch than a main meal at night? That's a really good question. And that all depends. It depends on your life, your lifestyle, etc. Theoretically, yes. If you think about the circadian rhythm and the sun and the sleep-wake cycle, I'm a big proponent of intermittent fasting. Even before it was called intermittent fasting and it became fashionable, I began studying fasting in the the late 90s and have followed different organizations that have actually used nutritional fasting for healing for decades. There are clinics in Europe that have done this for 70 years. And so fasting's not new. Intermittent fasting's not new. Some people on the internet seem to say they invented it. But anyway, I tend to avoid eating in the morning period because it's a very natural cleansing period for the body. You just think about it. You wake up in the first thing in the morning and you're basically cleansing. Everything's coming out of you. Now, if you're struggling with high stress levels and adrenal burnout and everything, you probably do need to eat a good protein meal first thing in the morning, okay? And then yes, and then at nighttime as the sun's going down, we should be wrapping up our eating. So if we think about the circadian rhythm and the sun cycle, theoretically we should be eating the biggest meal when the sun's highest as such. So we should have a bigger meal at lunchtime and then less in the nighttime. However, there are some other theories where people talk about, well, if you just think of our natural hunter-gatherer lifestyle, we'd be out during the day hunting and gathering and not eating because we're actually working during the day. And then when we're all coming back and sitting around the fire at nighttime is when we're in a relaxed mode, we're then eating as a communal gathering and in a relaxed mode. So the researchers such as Sachin Panda is saying, well, we should eat, finish up eating when the sun goes down, and they're looking at the circadian cycle. But when we think about our whole, historic and genetic and evolutionary biology, we probably actually evolved just relaxing, lighting the fire at nighttime and cooking and eating at nighttime. And so when we also put our evolutionary biology together with the reality of life, that we're at work, having our biggest meal in the middle of the day if you're working, maybe not now if you're locked down and everything, it mightn't be like that, but most people can't do the biggest meal in the middle of the day. And they actually find it hard to go to sleep hungry as such. So I find for most people, for me certainly, it's actually more likely, and I'm eating in a more relaxed manner when I have my biggest meal at night. So, and it makes sense. You might be with your family, you might be with your loved ones or whatever. It just makes logical sense and even evolutionary sense when we think about it. So I know the researchers are looking at that, and many cultures do eat there. Many of the cultures, think about it though, many of the cultures that eat their largest meal in the middle of the day also have historically had a 2-hour siesta afterwards. And that just doesn't work in the reality. And many people struggle with adrenal burnout and exhaustion when they don't have their blood sugar levels under control when they eat in the middle of the day. So again, and I was one of them. So you might find that you actually have better energy levels if you eat really lightly. And one person who Ori Hofmeckler, who wrote the Warrior Diet, he believes that you can graze on light things during the day. You know, like you might have some carrot sticks, or you might have something very light during the day, but, you know, like the hunter-gatherer, you eat a more solid meal at nighttime. So that's my opinion. You have to experiment with it, with your lifestyle and all of that sort of thing. But you know, there's a lot of arguments both ways. You've got to work with what works for you. What I am in agreement with, though, is that if you can eat in the early portion of the night and then leave time before you go to bed, where you've left a few hours, that is better from what all the research is showing. So you got to work with what's logical for you rather than what's perfect in terms of biology. So so some good questions there, and good to get the chance to even share that, because that's certainly what I find works for me. It's what many other people find works for them. And I know people who have really worked that, who have used their willpower so much that they eat their biggest meal, and then they sort of it's difficult eating with the family or whatever. They're trying not to eat too much at night time and all that sort of thing. So it actually messes up the social dynamics in what we're doing. So we've got to work with everything together. We are a holistic and social being. So yeah. All right. What else were we going to talk about here? Next topic that we mentioned through the week, and come back if you have any more questions on that. But that was all about, we were talking there about gastroesophageal reflux disease and acid reflux, preventing heartburn, all of those sorts of things. Now, we also talked this week about CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, and how it can help you burn fat and boost your immune system. Yes, it actually has some beneficial effects on the rest of the body. Now, one of the questions, I don't have here to bring it up there, but one of the questions that came in was how do I measure the amounts and all that sort of thing? And I don't think you need to worry about that. Like you're not going to. It arose because of the fact that the therapeutic dose for body recomposition effects of CLA is over 3 grams a day, and you're not going to get that from a diet, from your diet, okay? But the evidence certainly points towards the beneficial effects of increasing it naturally from foods. So if you tolerate ghee and butter, including more of that in your diet, can be helpful for CLA. So certainly, like even naturally, I cook with a lot of ghee. I cook with ghee a lot, and for that very reason, including more of that that Activator X, grass-fed ghee made from grass-fed cows. I make my own. I'll have to do a video and show how easy it really is to make ghee, and it just means that you can fry with ghee. It's the same really internal components as butter, but ghee you can fry without it burning. And so if you've ever fried with butter and you see it all smoke and burn and everything, that's the milk solids that are burning. Now, the milk solids are the actual things that are the most inflammatory. Just that little bit that's left in the butter there, they're the things, the lactose and the casein and etc. that are left in the butter, still even after churning and everything. They're the things that trigger allergies and intolerance and everything in people. So all that's happened with ghee is that you've essentially burnt that off, or clarified that off, so you're left with pure butter oil. Now, they did this in a lot of cultures where they didn't have good refrigeration initially, because the butter oil, then once you've got rid of those milk solids, the butter oil didn't go off. You could just keep it at room temperature for a certain length of time. So I still put mine in the fridge, and then it keeps for, like a year or whatever. But some people just make the ghee and then leave it on the bench, and you can just spoon a bit and use it like that. Certainly when I worked in restaurants, And for example, Middle Eastern restaurants, they would use ghee to make things like baklava and all of that. But it was commercial ghee, and it was left out, and it was preserved with petroleum byproducts in there. So so they take something that's healthy and everything and put petroleum in it. Anyway, don't get me started. I should be saying to you, hey, you should be saying to me, don't get me started. Anyway. All right. So where was I with that? Ghee, conjugated linoleic acid. So off the topic again. But if you're looking to follow a body recomposition challenge like our body transformation challenge, and you're looking at the therapeutic dose of conjugated linoleic acid in order for the body recomp benefits, the ability to trim down and tone up, then you're going to need to supplement. And as we were talking about, the challenge with many supplements out there in CLA, they're in capsules and they're not a concentrated form. So you've got to take like sometimes 12 capsules to actually reach the therapeutic dose. And so that doesn't work. So you really need a concentrated form. We work with a much more bioavailable concentrated form, and it gets the job done. Certainly gets the job done as far as assisting in your whole goals around body transformation. And it's just one of the things that we use as part of our body transformation challenge, and we do see it as a short-term benefit, because there can be, in my opinion, from looking at the research, there can be some of these inflammatory issues that can come up if you don't then tackle your diet. So it shouldn't be used to offset a poor diet, but it certainly can be used as a nutritional tool to really jumpstart things so that you get the confidence to keep going with your weight management and sort of stick with moving more towards a less inflammatory, eat-savvy approach and maintaining your weight, because underlying inflammation is another one of the triggers for putting on weight. So just focusing on losing weight without addressing the underlying causes means you're likely to yo-yo. And much of the diet industry wants that. Much of the people who run programs only on weight management, they want that because you come back for another program. We're more holistic focused in our organization, and we want to help you reach your goal and then transition onto other wellness-based approaches. Endless projects, just like, you've probably got endless projects around your home. There's endless wellness projects that you can tackle as you go through your life and look to improve your life and improve longevity. It's not done. You don't just go, oh, right. Many people think about that like, cure. Oh, how long will I need to take on this? Like often one of the questions, how long do I need to take this nutritional supplement before I'm cured? Before you'll be healthy forever and ever? Like as long as you want to slow aging, look your best, optimize your immunity, improve your gut health, look towards supporting your cardiovascular system as much as you want to look towards improving your central nervous system. That's how long you take things for, because we want to eat a nutrient dense diet, but we also want to supplement, in our opinion, at least with the 90 nutrients that the body really requires each and every day for optimal well-being. So Linda writes in, I love using ghee. It was a shame I didn't know about it when I was raising children. Yeah. And it's crazy, isn't it? And I'm going to talk about some of these herbs, these adaptogenic herbs soon. And, historically, many of them are used in Ayurvedic medicine. And the Ayurvedic medicine would have recommended that you actually use the herb with ghee. So Indian medicine, often they use a lot of ghee in recipes. And you might wonder why. There's actually reasons for that. Let's just take... Should I talk about that now? Yes, we should. We should talk about that right now. So this week, before we move on to the herbs, let's talk about curcumin. So, curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric. And I've seen, images going around about how wonderful turmeric is. Well, of course, turmeric is great. If you can use it in foods, if you can put it in your smoothie, all that sort of thing. Just know that you don't get that much. So if you grate your turmeric into your hot water and you like a bit of turmeric and lemon juice, for example, in a cup of tea, good for you. It gives you something warm to drink. It's probably soothing it is soothing on the gut, but you're not getting the rich benefits of the curcumin from that, because your body hardly absorbs much at all. Some people, and I've done it too, a spoonful of powdered turmeric in their squeeze of lemon, I actually quite like that. But your body's not getting much of that because it needs fat to be properly digested. Hence why, ever had a curry that doesn't have any fat in it? No, the turmeric, the actual curcumin part of that, is absorbed better with fat. So a lot of traditional Indian curries that, they have ghee in there. They have pepper. And pepper contains piperine, which enhances the absorption and bioavailability of the curcumin in there. So there are, it's interesting when we look at some of these cultures and everything, there were real reasons why recipes developed. They didn't know the scientific reasons, but they were very good at observing over the ages and passing that down. It seems like now we want to, the only thing we pass down is the ability to Google stuff. And unfortunately, you don't find a lot on the first 10 pages of Google. You Google something and you have a look. The first 10 pages will be one medical site after another, basically saying the same things. Test it. 10 pages probably. And most people nowadays, and especially millennials, won't go past even the first page. So you get the same information. And that's without us getting into the fact that these big companies, really are being requested to what's the word? Put forward certain information, whether you believe that or not. You just have a look. If you've been dealing with the current crisis right now, coronavirus, COVID-19, if you've Googled anything or gone to Facebook or gone to any page that mentions that, you're seeing messages come up saying, this is the real information. This is only believe stuff from the CDC and the World Health Organization. And what are they saying? There's nothing you can do to improve your immune system except for wash your hands and social distance and wait for a vaccine. All right, so in other words, that's what they want you to know. So what's going on here? So it's interesting that we might even do a special session of Healthy Savvy Life on this topic, because we're even seeing with the Therapeutic Goods Administration coming out and saying you can't talk about COVID-19 or coronavirus. You're not allowed to talk about that. And so that's a lot of control going on around this. Now, I understand why. There are a lot of unscrupulous vendors out there that have been really capitalizing on the fear around this and selling things for exorbitant prices. Let us know if you've seen that sort of thing. But we might actually talk about this at some point, because I do believe in freedom of speech. I do believe in freedom of choice in your healthcare, and I do believe in self-responsibility. And so I do believe that we should be able to talk about that and share with each other what's working for us, what we're using. We're not giving any advice. We're each not giving advice to each other, but we're communicating about what works for us, what we think, our thoughts, and that should be always, in our, democratic society, should be allowed and should always be encouraged as well. I remember somebody telling me, off the topic, I know. I remember somebody telling me that the space, that when we're in a never question authority type of scenario, that disasters can happen. I remember someone saying in the inquiry around the Challenger disaster, the space shuttle disaster, that there were people that were concerned, but they'd been so trained that they didn't question authority, that they didn't say anything. And so if everybody had been willing to work collectively and actually share their opinion, then that could have been averted. That disaster could have been averted. Well, what else is going on here where we're not chatting? That's why we do this show. We want to chat and help our community and discuss things. We want to hear from you. We want to know how you're feeling so we know how to respond and what information you're looking for as well. And also not just those, on the inside of our community, but you, if you're, if you happen to be catching this and you're not yet a member of what we, of our community as such, and, you're just a friend of the community. It's great to have you on board and watching, but we want to hear from you too and know what you're looking for. So, anyway, I digress. Okay. Just checking out the comments, see what you've got. All right, so bringing up curcumin and turmeric. So this week we shared the a turmeric latte recipe on Facebook, on our Instagram. If you've been looking for ways to follow the Eat Savvy approach, our Eat Savvy approach, then we understand that sometimes it's hard to know. Well, how do I'm so used to cooking in a certain way. I need some ideas. So we put together an Instagram page on that. So Healthy Savvy Kitchen is what that page is, and it's only just getting going. We're looking to share different recipe ideas there. We also are putting together a private group to enable you to share with the community recipes that fit within that structure as well. So reach out to us and ask about those. Easy to find the Instagram one, but we can invite you into the group as well. And one of the things that we shared though was this turmeric latte, and as a way of getting more of the curcumin into you. Now we use, most of our community are on an antioxidant supplement each day that contains a good dose of curcumin, and so that's easily bioavailable. When it's extracted, it's much more easily bioavailable, and especially then when it's coupled with other nutrients, it has more of that synergistic effect. But we're still big proponents of getting more into your diet and love the turmeric latte recipe here. Now, most turmeric lattes, if you've had them in a cafe or whatever, they're made on milk or made on nut milk and everything. I'm not a huge fan of nut milks. Well, I don't mind almond milk. I'm not a big fan of rice milks and soy milks and all those sorts of things because of the processing, etc. But, hey, if you want to make your own nut milk at home, you've got a good blender, you simply soak your almonds and then whiz them like crazy with water. You've created almond milk. You can filter it if you like, but most of the time commercial almond milks and soy milks and everything have the additives, maybe even added maltodextrin as a sweetener, etc., or malt, and again, so you're ending up with more of the sugar that you don't need. And often they have vegetable oil added in there as part of the ingredients as well, and you don't want that. So you're moving from dairy, which you might be intolerant to something else that's inflammatory anyway. So I'm not a big fan of those milks. But most of them that you have a turmeric latte, it's made on milk or it's made on one of the nut milks. And they're nice, great. So you can argue that it's better than coffee. But it's what we put in the coffee. The coffee, I don't believe, is the damaging effect. It's what we put in it, such as lots of milk and skim milk and sugar and syrups and all that sort of thing that can be unhealthy for you. Anyway, coconut milk you can also use to make a turmeric latte. Beautiful, really creamy if you use that as well. Again, when you're looking for coconut milks, what you're looking for is make sure, a lot of people they buy light coconut milk to try to, save on the fat. Light coconut milk is just watered down coconut milk. They haven't reduced the fat, they've just watered it down. So you'd be better for your budget and better for your health if you just got coconut cream and put as much as you needed in with enough water to make it more of a coconut milk. So when you're looking, definitely check the label and look for no additives. All you want to see on there is 100% coconut kernel extract. Like they just put the coconut water in there and everything, and along with the coconut pulp. So, and then also look for one that might even list on the label like that it's in a BPA-free can. So then that's healthy for you. Anyway, I digress again. But coconut milk is really good. I'm not a huge fan of coconut milk in a drink form. I certainly like it in my curries. But this recipe we shared is using butter or ghee along with MCT oil or liquid coconut oil so that you've got that fat component, you've got that rich curcumin component, you've got other beneficial anti-inflammatory and immune-boosting things in there, such as ginger, etc. And really quite delicious. So, and I like sort of like the Indian version where it's got a bit of cardamom in there as well and a bit of cinnamon and those sorts of things. So check out that recipe. It's on Healthy Savvy Kitchen and also on the page. I think we did share it on the Facebook page. And curcumin has an awful lot of benefits, and so lots of different benefits here. You may not be able to see that very well with the sides of it, but supporting fighting inflammation, which we're talking about all the time, helping with arthritis because of that anti-inflammatory effect, supporting the cardiovascular system, improving skin health, helping with pain management, helping with preventing cancer. What else? It's even helps with depression, helps prevent and treat diabetes, supports cognitive function. What else? Helps with cholesterol management, promotes gastrointestinal health, and improves respiratory health. There's a lot of benefits of turmeric. Now, the thing is that they talk about turmeric, and a lot of this is saying the benefits of turmeric, when actual fact, the researched benefits are on the curcumin. And so if you're just having turmeric, you're not necessarily getting a lot of these benefits unless you're having it frequently in your diet, which you would be doing if you're having a lot of Indian types of foods or turmeric lattes. All right, so yeah, and so that's why we supplement with that every day. It's in turmeric. Curcumin is in a supplement that we use each and every day. All right. Let's talk about these powerful stress-busting adaptogens, and how beneficial they can be. And curcumin is one of those things that can help as well, reduce inflammation and help your whole body cope with stuff as well. So we could almost throw that in there as one of the things as well. But let's just look at some of the specifics that I wanted to share with you. So I guess first of all, what are these adaptogens? We're talking here about these stress-busting adaptogens. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And I don't know what happened there, but something crazy going on there. So they're unique plants and herbs, really, these adaptogens that help balance up your hormones so that you can manage your stress response better on a day-to-day basis. And what's amazing is that they tend to have the ability to regulate the system sort of up or down based on your needs in the moment. That's what's amazing about them, and that's why we call them adaptogenics. And when you think about, if you've ever driven a modern fast sports car, sort of to explain how they work you step on the accelerator and it moves quickly forward, and when you let it off, it slows down quickly. It's very responsive, we would call that in a car. In contrast, your granddad's car, or maybe even your grandma's car, she might have had a slower car than granddad, you can put that accelerator, the pedal to the metal, and there's a lag, and then suddenly the car goes off, and then it coasts for a while. It's not as responsive as a modern vehicle, okay? Well, your adrenals are somewhat the same. You want them to make stress hormones quickly, and then stop making them as soon as they're done. And adaptogens help with that. But often what happens is we're in this chronically stressed mode that our body doesn't sort of stop making the stress hormones, and the adaptogens. So we keep coasting, so to speak, and we don't turn off things. And that's why sometimes exercise can help. If you're under a particularly stressful situation, going and doing something can burn up that, because that from a not environmental, from a whole what am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? From our anyway, can't think of it the way I'm trying to discuss this. Anyway, so we're over making these stress hormones, but we're over making these fight or flight hormones, but we're then not burning them up. Our lifestyle means that we're not using them for what we need to. So sometimes it's really can make you feel better if you've had a stressful day, to go and do some sort of exercise to help burn them off. But also, adaptogenic herbs really help with the ability to regulate that. So let's talk about number one is ashwagandha. So also known as Withania somnifera. This is one of the most well-known and common adaptogens. And the great thing is it can improve your cognitive function, your memory, whilst at the same time helping to relieve anxiety and stress. And there have been a number of, the great thing is it's really well studied as well. It has a long history of use, but it's well studied in that human studies have shown that it decreases anxiety, stress, cortisol, and even C-reactive protein levels, which are the markers for inflammation in the body. So it's a good all-rounder that we need in our day and age. And it's one of the primary ones that I've even talked about in terms of the herbs for anti-aging, our 6 amazing herbs. I talked about it last week, I believe. We have a blog post on it too. And some of these herbs date back centuries and are used in Chinese formulations. And this one's, ashwagandha is a good one for taking long term. It really can help you. And it certainly is really good. So really the key things for ashwagandha: helping you reduce stress and anxiety, decreasing that inflammation in your body, lowering the stress hormone cortisol, improving your memory function, and even aiding with neurodegenerative diseases. There's some research that suggests it can reverse the effects of neurological toxins that are associated with neurodegenerative diseases. So pretty good stuff. And then astragalus or astragalus is one of the fundamental adaptogenic herbs that are used in traditional Chinese medicine, and it's generally talked about for the benefits of longevity, again for fighting inflammation, for general organ support, especially the kidneys, and again it can reduce C-reactive protein levels in the body. So that's one of the markers for inflammation. And so when you follow the Eat Savvy approach, that's one of the benefits. You're reducing inflammatory foods and therefore reducing your risks all around, because inflammation is one, research is really uncovering it's one of the core components around disease now. Heart disease, everything from heart disease to neurodegenerative disease. So the more we can reduce inflammation, the better. And astragalus or astragalus, sometimes called, depends on how you pronounce it, a croissant. I guess it's all about pronunciation. Sauna or sauna, all depends on where you come from, right? So it's a particularly interesting substance, astragalus, because it has cycloastragenol, and this is a molecule that can lengthen the telomeres, okay, by activating telomerase production. So the telomeres are the structures on the end of the chromosomes that, and the shorter they become, the more they degenerate, the faster we're going to age, in essence. And this is where a lot of the, some of the recent Nobel Prizes have been around understanding this with the telomeres. And so, if you're wanting to protect, really reduce aging, astragalus is another powerful one. But also the way it works in the system, it's helping the stress response. And so it's not specifically needing to reduce your stress, So, but it's helping with the actual coping ability. So then we move on to, it's also great for the immune system as well. And in fact, right now we were talking about this from an immune response point of view in a previous session. It has immune boosting properties that can activate T cells even more than echinacea. So everyone out there, they reach for immune health type of herbs and everything that are good, that are really powerful. But here, there are other things that actually work better for protective immunity than herbs such as echinacea, and people don't think about them. So, but you, being tapped in with our community, you get to know about these things. Okay, so the next one is Bacapa or Brahmi, and it's traditionally used as a cognitive enhancer, a nootropic, so something for the memory, also for longevity, and it's also adaptogenic and can help with anxiety and depression. So researchers do believe that perhaps the ability for its concept of improved cognition is because of it reduces anxiety and allows you to then become more focused and be able to cope with stressful situations. But they have seen that in brain scans and everything, it can decrease stress in all regions of the brain. It's also an antioxidant too, so some pretty powerful effects there. And it's something that we use more in a focus-related product, nootropic type of thing, along with ginkgo biloba and gotu kola and those sorts of things for focus. But it's also helpful for reducing anxiety. So, you can be, that's the thing, it's adaptogenic. You can be focused, but also less stressed. And when you're less stressed, you can be more focused. So you can sort of see how these herbs can really work, from an adaptogenic point of view. So the interesting thing here, we were talking about ghee before, and it actually tends to work particularly well. Historically they would have used it with, because it's one of those Ayurvedic things, they would have used it with ghee as part of cooking and things like that. So it has been shown to be a definite stress reducer. Research shows that it has effects on the physiological stress, especially when taken in advance. This is Bacapa monieri or Brahmi, but it's an adaptogenic herb too. So with all of these things, they don't work straight away. They need to be in the body. So you don't just take it and go, there you go, it'll work. You take it and it has sort of cumulative beneficial effects. It takes a little bit of time for your body to work with it. But as I said, because it's fat soluble, you're better to take it with a meal or with some fat, with a turmeric latte, or with the traditional way was to take it with a bit of ghee. So then we have cordyceps, the Cordyceps sinensis mushroom, the caterpillar fungus, and this has been used, in folk remedies for like 20 odd different ailments, including colds and low libido and low energy and these sorts of things. So it's definitely good for combating fatigue. In just a 2-week study with mice, they used it. They saw a definite ability to combat fatigue in just 2 weeks. It showed increased energy levels, reduced oxidative stress, and supported energy and hormonal balance. Cordyceps is also good for the memory. Research has shown that it's able to reverse memory loss and improve memory and even support neural growth, and promoted the growth of the neuron pathways. So that's really important for neuroplasticity and even the regeneration of nerves. So this is the caterpillar fungus, Cordyceps sinensis, most often used for endurance, stamina, energy levels, and all that sort of thing. So you can start to see that when you're taking, there's not a this for that and a this for that. The great thing about adaptogenic herbs is that you can use a couple of them and have quite a varied benefit on the body. But it certainly is well known for its ability to boost exercise performance. Then there's things such as maca. Now, we were going to share another latte recipe that was cacao, raw cacao, and maca. And there are some really protective polyphenols in cacao that aren't in the cooked cocoa, so in normal chocolate. So there's benefits in taking that. And then also the maca. So this was a maca cacao latte. We'll have to share that with you. But it's basically the same sort of recipe as the turmeric latte. Turmeric has the turmeric and spices and etc. with MCT and butter and a bit of something to sweeten it up. Well, the maca, it's the same recipe. It's just got maca and cacao in there and for its benefits. But let me tell you about maca. So maca has been known for its ability to basically balance the hormonal system and reduce stress levels as sort of a flow-on effect of that. It supports sex drive and fertility, well known for that, boosting libido in multiple studies with men and women. So definitely there. And part of the belief of how that could be stimulated is the stress reduction, reducing stress and having sort of like that stress reduction effect that allows the libido to sort of come through, really, because they have tested it with antidepressant-induced sexual dysfunction and erectile dysfunction. So, in other words, they've seen it beneficial even when people are on these antidepressants, and then they've seen libido decrease and even erectile dysfunction decrease as a side effect of the medication, obviously. So obviously, wherever you can avoid medication rather than having to take medication and then something else to deal with the side effects, but nevertheless, you should never go off a medication without working with your doctor and doing something different too, doing something holistically. Because if you change nothing, nothing changes. So just to say, well, I need an antidepressant, I shouldn't be on it. Well, no, you have to make sure that you've done something to make some changes. And we've had a number of community members that have really worked with their doctor and eliminated antidepressant usage, even though they're on it for, sometimes decades. Not an easy road, but it is possible. You've just got to be diligent. This is self-responsibility and having a good doctor that can work with you to get off that. But it's not by getting onto another medication, it's by building your functional well-being up that you then don't need that. You're not as depressive, using some of these tools, these nutritional tools, to get you back on track. So definitely good. Maca is good for all-round hormonal balance and definitely helpful as a stress buster because of its adaptogenic effect. Then we have Panax ginseng, and it's a well-known adaptogen. It's often used in these, in some of the formulas that are for immune boosting and that sort of thing. But it's good for brain power, focus, generally calming the system down so you don't feel as stressed. Panax ginseng has shown to improve erection quality and as well as libido in men. So and even in people suffering from erectile dysfunction. A study also on postmenopausal women showed that it was able to improve sexual arousal. So all of these impacts that they've looked at points to that adaptogenic response in our hormonal system. And so this, if it's having those libido affecting impacts, then it's definitely having a stress reduction, cortisol lowering effect, although they're not always independently studied. So next is reishi. Reishi is well known for boosting the immune system. We use it alongside cordyceps mushroom. But it has antioxidant benefits. It can detox the system. In fact, animal studies showed that when reishi was introduced to the diet in animal studies, it counteracted the negative effects of an introduced toxin. So it really shows that it can have a very protective effect on the immune function, helping to detox the system. And researchers believe that, because it seems to have this anti-stress effect, it's probably because of the lessening of the impact of these exogenous impacts on us, these things that these chemicals or toxins or triggers that come from the outside. It can calm our system down from overreacting to that. Because see, we can be psychologically stressed, but we can also be physically stressed that then triggers the feeling of stress. So if your body's just not coping, you just think about it, if you're tired and you don't feel right and everything, then that's going to exacerbate the physiological stress, that psychological stress, that the physiological stress, the physical things going on are going to have that flow-on effect to the way you feel. So, you can't get things done when you just don't feel right. So that's some of the benefits. But there are other things as well that are much faster, and specific. So St. John's wort is a brilliant anti-stress herb that's good for nervous conditions, stress, anxiety. It's been used for a long history, and it has a quick effect. Valerian root is another one that has a very quick effect. You can have a very sedative effect, anti-anxiety capabilities as well. Lactium, a protein coming from milk, has a very beneficial effect as well, although that's not an adaptogenic herb, and that's just like a signal to the brain to calm down. So it can work very, very quickly. That's the great thing about these herbs. So they're less adaptogenic. Certainly St. John's wort does have some adaptogenic benefits there, but the lactium, the valerian are definitely calmative herbs. So they're less adaptogenic. So if you're looking to be focused and on point and dynamic and etc., then sometimes taking the stress reliever isn't the best thing. It might be better to take it at night time to help you calm down or whatever. That being said, it really helps if you find it hard to cope, if you've got a big event on or a big talk. I've certainly taken the things such as lactium, St. John's wort, valerian before a major talk, for example, just to knock the edge off and calm me down. Many people have taken that blend that we use when they've been really scared of flying. That might not be happening too soon right now, but just before really stressful events. So yeah, just really consider adaptogenic herbs if if you've been struggling with stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and all of those sorts of things. So hope that's been beneficial. That's it really for this particular session. We had a bit of a bumper session, went through some extra things that I wasn't expecting to, but that's all part of it, isn't it? Oh dear. I'm not sure what that related to, Linda, that one there about hospital nurses, but I think we're done there. Thanks for being with us. If there's any other questions or other topics that you would like to know about in future episodes of Healthy Savvy Life, then do please let us know. We're thinking of talking about things in the coming weeks, such as really going into more of the things such as curcumin. I gave you a little bit of a glimpse there because we shared that article on, or that recipe on the turmeric latte. Want to maybe do more of some of the newbies guide to how to get started on the Eat Savvy approach. Thinking about things such as, we haven't talked about prostate health recently, and so maybe some information around about managing and preventing issues with the prostate. There's some of the things that we're thinking about sharing on the show as well. Also, as I mentioned before, I was considering talking more about this whole concept of self-responsibility and freedom of information, because we're seeing, a lot of people not feeling comfortable to speak out about what they believe in terms of healthcare, and even that's what I'm saying. These organizations saying you can't talk about this, because it's not approved and everything. So our information is being, our information, like the information sharing, is being restricted by what's supposedly approved. But there are many doctors that are speaking out about the fact that they can't even share what they believe in because it's not been approved by the system. So for us outside of the system, whilst we're not issuing any medical advice in any way, shape or form, and we're not indicating any therapeutic claims in all of that, remember our important notice. So, not doing any of that, and that is an important notice to understand that we're educating you, we're sharing information, and that that should be allowed in any community. Otherwise, what are we in a communist community now suddenly? So anyway, we might talk about that, as along with the safety of complementary healthcare as well. So if any of those any of those topics interest you, let us know. Give us a comment, share a comment with us that you'd like to know more about that, so we know and we can put it on the list. And anything else that you might want to know about too. Can't guarantee that we can talk about it, but definitely jump on these weekly wraps. On the weekly wraps are where we just share hints and tips, answer your questions. Sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're longer, depending on your questions. So we want to hear from you. So that's it from me. All the best. And, remember, here in the Savvy team, we're encouraging you to be savvy, especially in the area of health and well-being. That is astute, sharp, perceptive, and informed. And that is what you are when you tap in. So thanks for being with us. We look forward to catching up with you next time around. All the best. It's Corey Sievers here, encouraging you to be savvy.